everybody. It's been a little over a week since my last stream, and I'm trying to get more regular, but we'll see how that goes. So I am making a retro classic fantasy deck builder game that I'm making in a custom engine that I've been building in C++ with my husband for many years now, since 2019 maybe. So today for about the last month of September and August, I've been working on a vertical slice to try to get as much of I would describe a vertical slice as being a reasonably polished but very, very small slice of the functionality. And it's going to be a pretty small game, but what I've been working on specifically is gone through maybe 7 iterations of the card. I think I'm pretty happy with this card design now. And I've just started adding some models for the viewport that we're going to be in here. And working on fleshing out the UI a little bit more. Because this ain't it. But the game is going to be a multiplayer deck builder with up to 4 players. And it's going to be an homage to games like Ultima and King's Quest and Arena and Daggerfall, and just those really generally very ugly but very, very distinctive games of the 90s that went really deep in the story and in the gameplay because they couldn't go so deep graphically. But I've just been in a very nostalgic mood, and I'm kind of in a fire has been let under my butt because I've been working on a shader to make kind of the dark fantasy vibe for about a year, and all of a sudden the entire world has gotten really excited about dark fantasy. But when you make a game in a game engine that you've made in C++, you work at a snail's pace. So I am trying to get a vertical slice to try to get some attention on the game so that I can get a good sense of if people are interested in what they're interested in specifically here. But I don't know if I'm going to miss the window or not. But anyway, that's what we're working on. So specifically today, I have a goal of trying to refactor some of my UI code. I've been using ImGUI, and I'm going to keep using ImGUI as my final product UI solution because I already have ImGUI support in the game engine, and I don't want to take the time to learn anything else. And my theory is if you can get images, then you can make something look polished, and you can in fact get images in ImGUI. So working on that, but specifically I'm going to be refactoring. I've been working on this morning, refactoring some of my UI code just to make it a little bit more manageable here. And as far as streams go, I'm gonna try to get on a more regular schedule. I think I've said that in the last couple of streams, but hopefully. So I've been working some overtime, and we've been in a little bit of a crunch trying to get stuff out for the quarter at work, but that's pretty much wrapped up. So now I can hopefully get to a more reasonable schedule. I'm thinking I'll probably aim for every Tuesday. Tuesdays generally are a good day for me. Alright, let's see if I can remember what I was working on this morning after I wiped toddler smudges off my glasses. And also, I restarted my computer, and then that triggered an update of the streaming software that I use that's wired up to my iPhone, and that has resulted in having to refactor or reconfigure all of my settings, and I feel like it's blurrier now than it used to be. So if it's for my regular streamers, if my video is blurrier now than it used to be, let me know, and I'll keep working on it. All right. So basically today, these all used to be large. These are all my, this is the UI code for rendering this main menu here. And we have a toolbar, we have a log, a players panel, and then we have a viewport. And I haven't added this yet, but there's going to be a little strip of stone or border here in this dark, oh, maybe you can't see it very well. This dark gray strip right here will eventually be stone as well. But then here I have a loadout panel where I'm going to show detailed views of either if you click on a player profile or you click on a card. You'll have more information loading out here. And this is kind of where I'm going to put a lot of the classic fantasy elements like the eye icon, which funnily enough is the driving inspiration for this game. I mentioned this on a past stream, but the Sierra games always had, and I think most classic RPGs had this, but it was like an eye icon, and clicking on that would change your cursor into an eye, and then when you hover over and click over something, you get information about that. And that is tied so deeply to so many wonderful memories of my childhood, and I'm trying to explore and see if I can create an environment in a world in which I can feel that way, and hopefully others feel that way too. So all of this code earlier was just in a pretty much a giant block of code, and I'm still not overly happy with how I'm specifying the various sizes, but I've now split them out into individual free functions inside of an anonymous namespace, and they're all given reasonable names now, and any scaling specific fields I need I've just put as static consts right above each individual method. And then any shared sizing data is going to go in this main draw method. And what I was just doing this morning, I'm yawning. What I was just doing this morning was I just created a panel dimension struct rather than having many copies of X size and X position. Just made a struct that has both. Just to make it a little bit cleaner and easier to see what's going on. Because one thing I haven't done a lot of work in MGUI, and I'm finding with the immediate mode rendering, it just generates a lot of code, and it can get it's very easy to get lost in what you're doing. So I'm trying to clean that up as much as I possibly could. Oh, so I just realized I need my log, or my chat log. Hold on a minute. There we go. Okay. Wondering why the brick got darker, it's because I had made a darker version earlier, but then hadn't been able to build to run the install command to actually shove it over into the install directory. So that just popped over just now because I'm now able to build. Ooh. It's finally becoming fall in Minnesota, and I love it. I love the fall so much. It's been in the 60s and cool, and sometimes low 70s with sprinkling rain here and there, and every once in a while a tree is starting to turn red, and I just love it. I think you don't want to be... So I believe in my new struct, pose comes first. So in really sad news, I've had IntelliSense on in my IDE for 5 years, but it hasn't actually worked for 5 years because I've been using GCC IntelliSense and MSVC to build, and I don't know why I've waited this long to fix this, but I moved over to using MSVC as my compiler for IntelliSense, and all of a sudden I actually get IntelliSense. So I don't know how I went this long without having it. So just a nice relaxing stream tonight. We're gonna get some UI cleaned up, and that's one of my favorite. I just love refactoring code. It feels so good. Then when I get bored of that, if I don't finish, I'm gonna jump back over to either, depending on what is tickling my fancy at the moment, either working on fleshing out more of the HUD, or I might work on adding more details to the viewport, to the scene. So we're going to start exiting a dungeon, which is kind of the view you saw, and I can show you in a minute. Oh, that ain't good. What did I change here? Viewport pose Y, viewport size Y, extent minus viewport pose, extent Y, minus cards pose Y. What were you? Yeah. So this game will be a deck builder where you are facing off against your 4 opponents, or you can play 1 to 4 players. So eventually I'm going to get into writing an AI for the opponent, which will be really fun. But the goal of the game, you're going to have, right now I'm starting with 30. You're going to have a deck of 30 enemies to defeat one by one, and you will not be directly fighting the opposing players. Each player will have a deck of 30 enemies to destroy, and each enemy destroyed is akin to a victory point, so you can think of it like that. But as you destroy one, you will move closer and closer, probably in bigger jumps, maybe something like this each time. And as you get out of the dungeon, there will be a forest path, and as you get out of the forest path, Eventually you're going to lead to kind of, I'm thinking like a final showdown area with stones akin to Stonehenge and kind of some flames and a cool lava showdown to fight the final boss. But that's just it's really all just a fun, nice way to show your progress towards getting to 30 victory points before your opponents, which I think is a cool idea. But you will have some interaction with opponents similar to Dominion, especially with the Warlock class. This is the Barbarian. I drew him last stream. I think I finished him over the last week or two. But similar to Dominion, where you have curse cards, you'll be able to do some limited things, especially if you're the Warlock class. They will specialize in curses, so you'll be able to do things like on the next turn, target opponent discards 3 cards. Things like that. Or you can resuscitate a fallen enemy, which would be akin to an opponent losing a victory point and going backwards a little bit in the progression. But I am so happy with this shader, you guys. It's really working out well for me. I've done a little bit on stream of showing my process for texturing, but you don't have to do any of these outlines. They just come for you. And really all you have to do is give it a flat color, but you can spice it up like I've done with the vines if you want to. But you do have to be careful not to go too heavy in the detail in the texture, in the base color channel of the texture, because you lose the flat effect really quickly if you do things like that. But this is the dungeon, and I want to add things like, that's the best part of making a classic fantasy game. I live for buckets, just an old bucket and skellies, like an old corpse with a sword through his chest, and creepy old lanterns and old ivy, and I'm gonna have a lot of fun decorating this, but this is just the base model for now. I even have a nice little dark room that you won't be able to go down, and I don't even know if you'll be able to look. I don't think the player is gonna have. They certainly won't be able to manually move themselves forward. I might allow them to look around so long as they can't look behind, because I'm not going to model anything back there. But what you can do is you'll be able to pick a card, and then the targets of the card upon card selection will become highlighted in either the viewport if it's an enemy or yourself. Actually, for yourself, you would pick, this would be glowing. Your profile picture of your player 1 would be glowing, and if it's targeting an opponent, an opposing player, their profile picture will be highlighted. So you can draw cards, just standard deck builder stuff. You get to draw cards at your turn. You can expend your stamina, which also, I don't know if other deck builders have come up with that idea, but I'm sure they have. But your stamina is how many cards you can cast. So once you expend your stamina for the round is over, or the play phase of the round is over, and now you can spend any acquired stat tokens, so strength, intelligence, agility, or wisdom, at the level up menu. So you can buy new cards and such using any acquired stat tokens. Okay, so let's see, where did I leave off? I think it was Uncle Bob, Clean Code guy, had said that ideally your methods inside of a method should be at the same level of abstraction, and I always thought that was a nice thing. So I have a little bit more work to do here, because this is my main method for this class, the play mode UI, and I want to see this level of abstraction. So toolbar is maybe a method or a declaration or two for sizing related variables, and then just a draw toolbar. Same thing for logs and panel, or the logs and players panel. I just want a couple declarations of sizing specific fields, and then just draw log, draw players panel. So I think with that being said, I'm going to make another wrapper method called draw logs and players panel, and throw all of this in there, because I don't think Yeah, it's not needed elsewhere. Oh goodness, I'm yawning a lot today. Oh, you need the game view for this guy, yeah. Oh, and you do need... So this is where it gets... I'm gonna call this panel dimensions. I'm gonna pass that in because some of this is declared in this level and I'm fine with just basic sizing fields being declared. What I don't want is a bunch of raw ImGUI methods at this level. So let's call it panel. I want to put them on this side. Okay, you need... kind of abusing the word panel here because it's also referring to a window, but I know what I mean. That's all that matters when you're working on something by yourself. Will I know what I mean in a month when I look at this? I think so. That's always the test. If you ever look back at your code and it's just crap code, just take that as a sign that you're getting better, and that current you is just a better programmer than past you, and that's why you think your past code sucks. That's the mindset I have. Okay. It's looking a lot nicer now. So this one I haven't gotten prettied up yet because I was following the same strategy here. On the other one of just every single field I need to know about, put in one giant struct, and then statically create that struct once so that you don't have to pay the cost of doing these calculations every frame, because GUI is every frame. And it's performant, but horribly hard to maintain. It's been 2 weeks, 3 weeks since I wrote all this. I've already forgotten what specific margins these refer to. Okay, but now this is much easier to read, because if I want to look at the order in which I'm drawing, it goes toolbar, logs and players, which goes logs, then players, and then the cards panel. And that's just easy. And if I want to drill in any of these, that's really easy to understand what's going on. Oh, the loadout should not go here, though. I thought I was forgetting one. Ooh. That is so nice. get rid of all the viewport redeclarations now because oh my goodness sake. So in the world of being a VB.NET developer by day, I am really screwing with my brain when it comes to when it comes to switching languages all the time. What did I call you? Did I call you panel dimensions? I did. Hi Noise! I have written an engine with my husband for the last 6 years, so we're using our homespun engine, which is a wild experiment. But it's working pretty well so far. But I can, I don't know how to post links, because I'm fairly new to streaming, but I can show you what the repo is called. So it's called NC Engine. It's open source. I don't know if anyone wants to use it. They can use it at their own risk, but we started making this 2018-ish, something like that. And it's right here. It's github.com/ncstudios/ncengine. And it totally depends on what your goal is, but I highly recommend, if your goal is to understand what the heck is going on underneath this, behind the scenes, make your own engine. It's pretty easy. It's not easy to do, but it's like you can make a renderer pretty simply nowadays, especially if you do OpenGL. We went Vulkan, which is was a brutal choice, but I stand by it. But I don't think I needed to know that much. I think I dove into Vulkan before I even had enough C++ for one, or graphics programming knowledge. So I think I missed the forest for the trees and a lot of the basic graphics programming concepts, but they've kind of caught up with me now, so I feel pretty competent in that area. But it's C++, CPP23 right now, and we use CMake for the build system, Linux and Windows support. And right now our backend is Vulkan, although we've switched over to using something called the Diligent library, Diligent engine. And I talk about this almost every stream because they are such a cool library, but it says engine, but what it really is an abstraction layer for graphics. And I have no part of making this, but this basically says it allows you to write code once, and then you can, it's automatically compatible with Vulkan or DirectX 12 or DirectX 11 or OpenGL or WebGL. Oh, here. Oh, yeah. And Metal, I think I missed that one, and WebGPU, which is super cool. So we started out writing an engine in Vulkan, or writing the renderer in Vulkan, and then maybe 4 years in, so about a year ago, it was too slow. And it was the first renderer I'd ever made, so we decided to cut over to this, which I highly recommend generally. It's pretty good. And then my husband had written his own physics engine from scratch, and I think you can see that in like our earlier releases of the engine. Maybe in the Pirate Software Game Jam you can see that. But he has since cut over to using Jolt for the physics engine. Then we use MGUI like every other indie game engine creator out there. We use MGUI or Dear MGUI for UI code, And that's about it. One day I'll do an engine tour, but right now I'm actually using the engine to make a game, so I'm not even in the engine's repo right now. I'm building a fantasy game. You do too. Why don't you have a panel dimensions member? It's right here. Maybe you're just in the OOU namespace. No, you're not. You're in OOU UI. Included right here. OOU. UI. Panel dimensions. I'm just going to call that some kind of crazy IntelliSense hasn't caught up with me yet bug. Plow on. So Noise, what I'm doing right now is going through and refactoring all my MGUI code that I'm using to render the UI into much more maintainable, logical chunks so I can see what's happening, because I haven't done a lot with MGUI before, so I've just been vomiting blocks of MGUI onto the page, and before I started this work, it looked a lot like this. It's just all a big giant blob, and then I have all of the sizing related fields I need in a giant struct. So this class is going to get refactored next, but right now I'm cleaning up the first one. Oops. Oh, maybe I don't. Did I? Here's a weird question. I'm not using the namespace OOU, so how do I not need to? I'm in an anonymous namespace right now. How am I getting away with not using the OU namespace here, and it works just fine? That's just crazy. That would probably be my problem. So we need extent viewport. Isn't that weird? What is causing me not to need to properly namespace? Hello, Axar. I'm sure I did not get your username correctly. I apologize. It's a cool name though. So I am working on making a fantasy game in a game engine that I wrote myself with my husband, which is quite the wild ride. And specifically what I'm doing right now is working on a vertical slice. So I want to try to catch the hype for all the dark fantasy, because I've been working on the shader for almost a year specifically for dark fantasy, and then all of a sudden the internet exploded with all like the Mid-Journey generated dark fantasy. And the problem of making your own game engine is everything moves at a snail's pace, so I might be working on this game for 3 or 4 more years. But anyway, I'm making a vertical slice so that I'm just going to keep polishing and polishing and polishing and polishing until I get to a very, very small bit of gameplay that I can capture in a trailer to try to see if I can get attention and see what people like about it, what people don't like about it. And I've given myself a month, the month of September, and I don't think that's going to be enough time. But I'm really gunning for it right now. And more specifically than that, I have been vomiting a bunch of ImGUI code onto the screen for the last 3 weeks because I'm relatively new to ImGUI. My husband's done almost all of the ImGUI work in the game engine, so I'm trying to get my bearings on ImGUI. Hard is a weird word, so the question is, how hard is it to write your own engine? It depends on what you're trying to do. If you just want to like goof around and build a renderer, I was telling Noise that like if you can follow OpenGL tutorials and have like something that's rendering a triangle in a couple of hours, and you could call that an engine. But it just depends on what your purposes are for how hard it is. So if you want something that's going to be like Unreal or Unity, just don't write your own game engine. But if you want something really, really specialized to a really narrow thing, and you also enjoy spending 5 years writing code that will probably only ever be used by you, and you really enjoy that, then it's fun. And then if something is fun, then it's really not hard. So we were working on, why did we choose to write our own game engine? So we were working on making games with Unity back in 2018, 2019. And I don't even remember what the networking library we were using was, but we were building a game using some networking library, and Unity deprecated it. And just, that was the final straw, because it was really frustrating, because you'd get some kind of bug in Unity or some kind of performance problem, and you just have to Google like, why is something taking so long to compile, or why is it so slow with this, or why can I only have 4 dynamic point lights casting with soft shadows? And your hands are tied. And yeah. And so then my husband started writing I don't even know if he would have called it a game engine at the point. He just started tinkering around with rendering and writing a renderer, and he started writing in DirectX, and then he just started adding an ECS onto it, and his goal was just to learn C++, and that was a long time ago, 6 or 7 years ago probably. He was tinkering around, and then I started tinkering around because I wanted to learn how to write shaders better, because I was trapped in tutorial hell with shaders. So I wanted to make an outline shader, but all I could do was just like cobble outline shaders that people had online. I didn't understand what part of the code was making it run this way, so I started getting into shaders, and then that got me more interested in graphics. Hey Nalmiga. So I was just explaining why we decided to make our own game engine. But long story short, it's because I'd much rather have something that works way worse than Unity or Unreal, but if it breaks, I know exactly why it broke, and I can just go and fix it myself in an evening, rather than file a support ticket and wait for 3 years. Okay, so the game is a multiplayer deck builder game, 1 to 4 players, and it's going to be an homage to classic retro RPGs of like late really, really late 80s, early to mid 90s. So like Ultima and Arena and King's Quest and all of the Sierra games where you have a little eye icon here in your toolbar and you have a coin purse that you can click on, and you have maybe a sword icon you can click on. And generally they're shaped like this, where you have your team loadout, and then you have the viewport, and you have some kind of context menu here. And they normally looked absolutely terrible, but there was something so safe about them. Yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, there was something just so safe. And I think either because I'm in my 30s now, or it's just all the political and otherwise craziness that's going on, but I've just been desperate for childhood nostalgia. And I think I want to create a place where I can go and play with my brother and my husband and our friends and just play like a simple deck builder game and just escape for a while, but escape to a very specific place, which is like how I felt when I was a kid in the 90s, playing, just like, first of all, just buying a box from the store. I don't think I'm actually going to be able to make physical packaging, but wouldn't that be cool? Maybe if I actually make money from this, I'll do like a collector's edition of physical packaging. But yeah, some things I really like about it. So the idea is that your victory points are represented by how many enemies you have killed. So you're going to start, you don't actually directly interface with your opponents. Usually. You can in some small indirect ways, but you're going to start at the beginning of this dungeon, and there will be a monster in front of you, and you'll draw your basic starting hand, and you can pick what class you want to be between Barbarian, Mage, Warlock, and Rogue. And each of those 4 classes is associated with a stat. So either Strength for Barbarian, Int for Wizard, or for Mage, Agility for Rogue, and then Wisdom for Warlock. And you'll start at the beginning of the cave. Your goal is just to defeat all 30 of your monsters using the deck that you'll create over the course of a single run, faster than your opponent's defeat there. So it's really a race to 30 victory points. But it's just represented visually by how many monsters have you defeated, and every time you defeat a monster, you're going to move further along the route. So it's kind of a race almost, if you will, but really the environment is just a visual indicator of how close you are to winning the game compared to your enemies. And if you want to click on, this isn't implemented yet, but if you want to click on an opponent, you'll be able to see how far along the route they are. So it's going to go dungeon into forest path into kind of a stony Stonehenge magma pit final boss level. But what I really like about it is, so in staying in line with RPGs, you're going to pick a class like I was talking about, and there will be a skill tree, and that's actually the library where you can buy new cards. So along with a weapon card that you'll be able to equip, which is the only one I have designed here. You will also have training cards, so you can play a card using stamina, which I'm also pretty proud of, but stamina will be like your energy in Slay the Spire. But you'll have training cards that if you play them, it'll exhaust a stamina, but you'll accrue 1 stat token in the stat that's given to you by the training card. So there's going to be a train strength card, and that will accrue 1 stat token. And you can think of that like the currency in Dominion. So say you, at the end of a round, you have 4 strength tokens. Then once you're done, you've exhausted all your stamina, you'll be able to come in here to the level up menu, and then click the level up menu and choose to expend your stat tokens into buying cards. So strength tokens will be for the strength skill tree, and you'll actually be able to multi-class too. But thank you. I'm really excited about it. I just have a lot of work left to do, but it's very fun work. So I'm really happy with how it's looking, how this is looking. The kind of artistic challenge I'm having is I want to go dark fantasy because it looks beautiful and very just oozes juice and nostalgia. But I also want to go classic fantasy, and classic fantasy is ugly as shit. Like, I'll show you guys. Like, this is what Ultima 7, well, Ultima 7 actually looked pretty good. Let's go to like, Okay, so first of all, this is the game art for Ultima 5, which I've never played, but Ultima 5 looks cool as hell. Look at how 80s that is. But then if you look at the actual game, it's god awful. Let's give it a, let's go Ultima 6. So the games are horribly ugly, but I really want to capture the nostalgia of this time period and of this style. So I'm torn between, like, stylistically, I'm torn between going true to what made these early 90s games amazing, like, or distinctive, and making something that actually looks good. So I'm kind of leaning towards the actually looks good right now, because there's nothing 90s about this viewport or this card, but this is ugly, but also more 90s. So I'm trying to, it's kind of a fun challenge, but I'm trying to find a nice middle ground between dark fantasy and retro fantasy. Anyway, back to cleaning up the UI. So I think I have all copies of the viewport. Earlier this morning I had just statically declared the viewport within each of these helper methods, but I think I have it now pulled out into common code. So I think now I'm going to move on to cleaning up the card menu in a similar fashion. But I'm getting major FOMO because people have been using Midjourney to create unbelievably cool, well beyond my capabilities to do, like little videos of people like drawing a sword and walking down a forest path in dark fantasy style, and it's making me have so much FOMO, because even if I didn't have a job and a young toddler, I would not be able to make this game in any amount of haste, just because there's a lot of work involved. That's one major con for writing your own game engine. It takes a really, really long time to do anything. Except for fix bugs. I think that fixing bugs in your own game engine is infinitely faster than fixing or getting a bug fixed with a commercial game engine. But it's very cool. I have a tremendous amount of pride for just the fact that we've been able to persist on a project, he and I, for so long, and we actually have something to show for it. But thank you. I will need all the luck I can get coding it. So this is what I was talking about. This is what my first stab at trying to make ImGUI performant was just to... So ImGUI is an immediate mode GUI, and if you think, I don't know what the name is for an alternative GUI, but if you think of Windows Forms, which actually that's a really niche thing to bring up. I don't think most people know what Windows Forms is. I just happen to know because it's what I do for my day job, which is I'm a legacy desktop developer. And Windows Forms was huge in like the early aughts, early 2000s, but it's not so much used anymore. I think people still use it, but the point of all of that was there's like a... GUIs are usually split into there being a tree in memory, so you can have, like, at the root of the tree will be your window, and then inside of your window you'll have like multiple form objects, and inside of those forms you'll have controls, and inside of those and it's all like stateful, and so those things all just exist on the heap. But with ImGUI, every single frame you're pushing onto the stack. Like, I want to draw right now, like immediately, that's why it's called immediate mode GUI. I want to draw a form, and then inside of that form I'm going to draw all the panels I need, and inside of those panels I'm going to draw all the text boxes, which is kind of a cool idea. So then you just, at the end of the frame, you just drop it all and redraw it all. So it's cool, but it's definitely a different paradigm than I'm used to. So if you see, like, here is the player loadout, which corresponds to our simplest form, which is down here. So I say, right now, ImGUI, set the next window position to be 0, and then the loadout position. and then set the next window size to whatever size I want. And like right now, create a new window called loadout. I should actually call this loadout window, but loadout window. And then I wrote a method to fill the background of the window with a background image. And then I say like imgui right now, create a text box or a string of text, create a separator, and then create all this text, and then stop. And then by the time that we exit the scope, all of this stuff is gone. And then next frame it's all drawn again. Which is just it's very, very good for like quickly mocking out a simple UI, but you can do complicated things. And I'm of the opinion that if you can get your own fonts, which you can, and background images, then you can create whatever you want. I mean, you can do buttons, and I think the sky's the limit now. So I'm going to test that theory. Okay. Where to begin? This one's a lot more complicated. You know what? I think I'm going to let Sleeping Dogs lie with Card Hand UI and focus on actually mocking out. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the class selection. So right now when you launch the game, this is the menu that you get. And we don't have any kind of matchmaking or Steam integration at all yet. But you can choose a multiplayer game, and then you get immediately brought in here. And what I really want us to do is go into a choose your class menu. So I need to pull up, I made a game design document before I actually did anything else, which was definitely worthwhile if you're going to be making a game. And bear in mind, I don't know if you want to take any advice from me, because we've made games before, but we've certainly never made a single penny from any pursuits related to game dev. So with that in mind, my advice is to make a game design document, because in here I talk about the flow of the game. So on game start, players are presented with the option to choose their base class. So let's go. The other thing I recommend, which I'm totally not doing here, is actually, you know what, I'm going to. Now that I say it out loud. What I was going to say is I definitely recommend keeping your commits, well, using source control first of all, but I think everybody does nowadays, but keeping your commits distinct, and don't blend your commits together. I've been programming for, okay, I'm 33, and I started programming seriously when I was like 18. So that's 15 years, and I'm still a newbie. Yeah, so I'm just going to call you Axar. This is a home for newbies, because I'm a perpetually newbie. I have no grasp of how much I understand, because I'm so insulated against what everyone else is doing. But I think any stage of the journey is totally valid. I still get hung up on C++ all the time. I've only recently started liking C++. I used to loudly declare for years that I hated C++. And that's coming from I'm a .NET desktop developer by trade, I will say, and C# is way easier than C++ because you have the garbage collector and everything is a reference. You don't care about, like, you don't even care about const in C++. You kind of do, but not nearly like this. And then what also trips me up about C++ is just the what do they even call it? The oh my gosh, the units, that translation units. I don't even know, I can't truly tell you what they are, but it's like what does the compiler have in its context when it's looking at your file. So what game engine are you using? Or are you gonna write your own? I highly recommend everyone write their own game engine. Just pull up the OpenGL tutorial and go to town. Although OpenGL is probably... Actually, I take that back. I think OpenGL is a phenomenal language to learn for beginners. And I do not learn Vulkan. That's what I can say with confidence. Do not learn Vulkan as your first language like I did, because you're going to miss so much because you're just endlessly typing. And you don't know what you're typing, and you don't know why you're typing it. You're just following tutorials, and there's so much code. It's so difficult to understand what each line does. But if you have all the time in the world, I would learn OpenGL, and you're trying to make your own game engine, I would learn OpenGL, and then I would learn Vulkan. Or DirectX 12 instead of Vulkan, either one. Okay, so I'm going to say environment. So this PR was actually, or this branch was actually just for creating the 3D world. So I'm going to push this and merge it and then start a new branch called class menu. I think Unity is fantastic. I really do. I think it's perfectly acceptable for making a game. Yeah, good luck. It's really fun. There's getting lighting, just any kind of lighting, like even like Phong lighting for the first time, is you feel like a god. It's the coolest feeling ever. And then I've written shadows over and over and over again, and I struggle with it every single time, but once you get shadows, you will feel like you're ready to be hired at Unreal or Epic or Unity as a principal engineer, because you're going to feel so cool. Okay, so all I did was just what kind of source controller are you using for Unity? I don't remember what we did. I think we just used GitHub and Git, but it's been a long time now. But I highly recommend learning about source control. Well, you said you're a web dev, so you know about source control. Never mind. But source control is your friend. And even if you're working on a solo project, I would still do it, because this is so sad. I have always, when I'm making assets, since the dawn of time, I will make assets in a separate folder. Oh, you totally should. We need all the help we can get. But if you open an issue, we probably will never close it, just so you know. But if you open a PR, yeah, we would would greatly appreciate it. We have lots of crap that in fact, you could rewrite our renderer again. Oh my god, what happened? No. Oh, all of my asset MRs have just, oh god, why? I don't want to go through this again. What I was gonna start talking about was that I've always, up until 2 weeks ago, when I make an asset, I save it in a different folder unrelated to source control, and then I create a copy of that asset and I copy it into source control. And it's an extra 20 seconds for every asset and every change in every asset, but it's worth it because then I have backups. And I finally 2 weeks ago decided I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to save directly into my source controlled folder. And then I got hit with the world's worst merge. It looked a lot like this. And I thought it was finally in the clear. I don't know why this is happening. I'm just going to discard all. Okay, maybe just figured this out. I don't think this one will be so bad, actually. I don't know why that merge got so screwed up. Okay, now for the moment of truth. It's probably because I forgot to pull latest into my branch before pushing and merging. Alright, fingers crossed the UI is not completely clobbered. Okay, aside from the card being the wrong card, which hopefully we can just regenerate the assets. This is why you want to make commits early and often, so you don't end up in this crap. This is what I get for doing multiple different initiatives on the same commit. Okay, cool. Oh, wait. No, okay. I know. There's nothing worse than trying to do merge conflicts on assets. With code, you can remember what you did last, but with assets, it's like, okay, two identically named files that you're serialized to binary so you can't view their contents. Which one do you choose? The one that was from 2 months ago or the one that you've been spending 2 months on? Choose carefully. Okay, but we're in a good spot now. So we're going to create a new branch. And we're going to call it class selection. So I'm just adding an enum for class selection to my UI mode struct. Now comes the fun part, which is browsing Pinterest to get ideas about what this is going to look like. So funnily enough, Pinterest is such a good, this is absolute garbage, whatever I pulled up right now, but generally Pinterest is such a good source for inspiration. Well, it's kind of letting me down right now. I'll have to find my... somewhere I saved it. But the only class that I've actually drawn so far is Rogue or Barbarian. So let's pull. Which one are you? I think I want this one for now. Pinterest is the best. So what I'm doing now is mocking it up. It's gonna make these temporarily different colors. So what kind of game do you want to make, Axar? One of my all-time dreams, if I ever get enough money, to be able to quit my job, which is of course the ultimate dream. Even though I like my job, but I would just like to be able to come at this with some energy and not have it be like my end of night thing. But my ultimate dream would be to make a game where one owns a small hat shop, a la Howl's Moving Castle, and your only goal is to make hats. And they would be physics based, and it's like a cozy game where you just go and craft. But you would think that that'd be easier than a multiplayer deck builder, but it's really not because of just the amount of asset creation and level design and character creation and gameplay systems. I started mocking that one out thinking it would be easier than this one, but it was not. 2D pixel art is really, really cool. I've never been good at it. I have a friend and she's really, really, really good at it. The hat shop idea. I think it'd be so cool. I that's the game I want to play. I want to be like Sophie from Howl's Moving Castle in Edwardian England, going around and collecting twigs and lace and doilies and berries and flowers and growing my own flowers and then sticking them into hats. I think that's the font. Puzzle platform would be really cool. I feel like I wouldn't be able to come up with any good puzzles. What kind of vibe are you gonna go for? Actually, I'll be back in a minute. I'm gonna run to the bathroom. Escape the office would be so nice. You should make it start with a mandatory return to office mandate. And then make it so that all of the desks are open. So there's just one long table with everyone's laptops right next to each other. And people from HR loudly talking while you're trying to code. That's the office that you have to escape from. I love my job. I have a fully remote job, and hopefully it stays that way. It was a remote first company. But I've been seeing all sorts of return to office mandates, and I just hope that never happens. That'd be terrible. Although, you know what? I actually weirdly prefer working in the office, but I live out in the middle of nowhere, so the commute was killing me. And I can't commute to where I work. They are in a different state. But escape, that's a really good idea. What would the puzzles be? You know, I think the character selection screen is a class selection is a really good time to go classic fantasy instead of retro fantasy, or dark fantasy, I mean. So I need to find the pin that I found. Where is it? I've not been doing a very good job of managing my pins. Well, it's gone. Good for you. Now's the time to go all in on game dev. Who knows what the world will even be like with AI? In 2 years anyway. The other thing that is good about being remote, which is probably being highlighted from my stream, is that I'm a chatty Cathy, and I used to be, I was making fun of HR, but I was probably the chattiest person in the office. And now, I don't have anyone to talk to when I'm remote. So I get a lot more work done. But when I'm on stream, I'm just chatting. It's really fun. Yeah, I lost my pin. It's probably saved in like cookbook recipes for fall. Some random board that has nothing to do with what I was doing. Yeah, you know what? I think that this is a really good opportunity to go, like, rather than do this barbarian, go full barbarian. I'm gonna hide that. Not you, the other one. Oh shoot, I added halftones to that. Let's go to... Always save your art in a separate folder. I think that's good work. So this guy's not actually done because one of my OG first ever stream followers, Detwolf, suggested that he should be holding the bloody head of an orc by the hair, like the beheaded head of an orc, and that is absolutely what needs to happen. But I got kind of burnt out on digital painting for a while after I did this guy, so this will just be my mock-up. Yeah, if we do... Just pretend. Okay, you can be the warlock. You can be the rogue. So the thing about the dark fantasy aesthetic is it's so cool, but it's really dark and kind of a little bit desaturated and very heavy on the black. And then with classic fantasy, it's very saturated, very primary color, and doesn't have a lot of visual continuity. And so trying to find a point in between the two has been a fun challenge. And then the other thing I've been having a lot of fun with is font selection. Oh, I have to show you guys. This is so cool. So somewhere on Reddit, I found the Pulp Magazine Archive, which is a collection of pulp magazines, which is exactly the aesthetic that I'm going for on the classic fantasy side. Because all the cover art from every game from the 90s looked like this. But, I need to figure out how to add links to my YouTube so you guys can have to type in archive.org/details/pulp magazine archive !sword equals -week. But I've been going in here for typography to try to get ideas for what my fonts should be. And there are some really cool things in here. The one that I was really impressed with, I actually bookmarked separately, because there is a magazine called, oh, I didn't bookmark it separately where I put it in my Pinterest board, so it's probably lost forever. But, oh, what was it called? It was called Thrust. So look at how cool this is what I'm basing my car design on. Okay, this right here, this is the Mid-Journey generated stuff that's been absolutely sweeping the internet because it looks so damn good. Oh, it's giving me such FOMO. But anyway, this is a science fiction magazine that was popular, I think, from the 70s, maybe 60s to the 80s. But the font here is so cool and the aesthetic here is amazing. And I found that just by trolling through the Pulp Magazine archives. But I'm trying to find, in all things, a balance between dark fantasy and retro fantasy. I mean, it doesn't get better than this. Look at that. Look at how good this is. God, that's so cool. Oh. I know, it's such a treasure. This one was the original font that I decided to settle on for, because I have like a statement font, and then I'm using Garamond or Garamond. What is it? Hold on a minute. Garamond as my like informative font. I don't really know the right name, but I really, really like this one. It's called Bokor, and I think I got it either off of Google Fonts or defont.com in the free section. But then I realized something. Look at this. It's so Harry Potter. Oh, I am terrible at that. But what you can do, so how do you identify the fonts from the images? You can go to a subreddit called, I can't remember if it's the what is this font or it's the typography subreddit. You will find out in a second for you. Identify this font, r/identify this font. And you can put a picture of whatever font you're going for there, and then they can generally, some wizard will tell you, oh, that's blah blah blah, and it was really famous between 1971 and 1974, and you can find it for free here, or they'll tell you it's not free. But usually I just find something that looks, so I'll find a font that's really cool, and then I'll go on to Google Fonts. Oh, hi Omega Killer. So usually I'll go find, I'm searching for vibes, not particular fonts generally, unless I find one that, like Garamond, which is the Apple font from advertisements in the 80s. But you can try r/identify this font and just post a picture of the font in question and see if they can find it for you. So Omega Killer, I am making it, so we are making the game while making a game engine. And so we have been working on a game engine for roughly, I don't know, I keep saying 5 years, it was like 2019, so 6 years now. So we built a game engine in C++, and it's gone through a lot of different iterations, but we've been at the point for a while now where we can pretty much, it's close enough that we can make a game. And I'm guessing that I'm going to have to go back and do yet another refactor of the renderer, because it's performant on my computer, which has an RTX, I don't remember, RTX something graphics card, so it's like a 3-year-old graphics card. But it's running at like 40 frames per second just in the just in my basic shell of a game, which I could show you right here. So this scene does not have very much going on at all. The heaviest stuff that we're doing is just the card shuffling in ImGUI, and it's running at like 40 frames per second on my laptop, which the laptop is 6 years old and has an integrated graphics card, but there's nothing about this scene that should be causing it to run at 40 frames per second. So I will probably end up having to go back and do an optimization pass on the renderer. But yeah, we are pretty much from scratch. Now nothing ever is from scratch, because we didn't invent C++ and we didn't invent CMake and we didn't make our editor, but we are not using a game engine where we originally wrote the entire, so my husband wrote his own physics system and then I wrote my own Vulkan renderer, but in this technically the third iteration of graphics, I've cut over to using a library called Diligent Engine. And while it says engine in the title, what it really is an abstraction layer that is essentially its own graphics API, but under the hood it compiles to whatever you need it to. So you can run on where it's interoperable with Windows and Linux and Mac, and then it has Direct3D, OpenGL, OpenGLES, Direct3D 12, Vulkan, Metal, and OpenGL on WebGPU. I think he does say it right here. The creator of this library is really responsive and super cool to work with. This library is open source, by the way. But essentially, it's like yet another graphics API, but it's an abstraction over all of the graphics API. So you only have to write your rendering code once. Yeah, Vulkan. I was telling Axar that. So when I first started writing the graphics engine, I did it with no graphics knowledge and just dove right into Vulkan. And that is a path one can take, but I don't know that I recommend that path for if your plan is to learn graphics programming, then I would recommend just going the traditional route, which I think is OpenGL tutorials. There's really high quality tutorials out there, and OpenGL is much simpler than Vulkan, so it lets you actually absorb the concepts. I didn't absorb really any of the concepts. I just went right to Vulkan. And so I found myself in tutorial hell for a really long time because I didn't understand actually what I was doing, because you have to write so much code that you lose the plot. Like 400 lines into your 5,000 line long renderer, you've completely lost the plot of what are you actually doing. So I would recommend first writing a really simple renderer in OpenGL and then porting it to Vulkan or Direct3D, D3D12. I don't know anything about Metal. I think Metal's on the same like kind of abstraction layer as Vulkan and D3D12, but I'm not an Apple person. And then, so my husband had written his own physics engine, but we were trying to make a game last year that required wheel physics, and that was quite an ask. So then we ended up porting over to the Jolt physics library, which is another open source physics library, or another open source library that gives you physics. And that library was used in Horizon Zero Dawn. So the two libraries I recommend are Diligent Engine, but I don't recommend using going Diligent until you've done at least one OpenGL renderer and one stab at a lower level renderer, because Diligent is kind of, it's meant to emulate D3D12, and it's a little bit higher level than Vulkan and D3D12, but not a whole lot. So it's not all the way up to D3D11 or OpenGL in terms of high level. So I wouldn't try to port over to something like this until you've learned like what a descriptor set is and what a command queue is. But the other library I recommend is Jolt Physics, which is free and was used in Horizon Zero Dawn. Oh my god, it was used in Death Stranding too. I didn't know that. That's cool. But it has some really cool functionality. I've heard a lot of good things about Bullet. I'm not the one to talk to about physics. That was my husband's initiative almost entirely. Oh, that's really clever of you. So you're saying, Omega was saying that they have started with OpenGL just to learn the concepts, and then they're writing in such a way that it'll be easy to plug into DX12 or Vulkan or Metal. That's a good idea. Oh, I like that font. That's a good one. So I'm so happy I discovered Garamond, because this is without fail, without a doubt, the font that they have in the Apple advertisements from like the late 80s and just like any tech advertisement. This was that font. Oh, I missed your other question about the game or the editor. So pull it back over. So this is completely ImGUI. You're absolutely right. I'm going to use ImGUI for the actual production UI, and I'm working on that here. My plan is to slowly replace every ImGUI panel with an image, and then slowly replace every ImGUI font with one of the fonts that I was referencing. And then this right here is our in-game editor. So we can do neat things like light and oh, that looks really nice actually. I kind of like that purple. Turn on shadows. We can change the shader properties, change the mesh. But yeah, I'm not going to learn or spend the time to do a different UI solution. Instead, I'm just going to push ImGUI to its absolute limits. I've been finding on some YouTube videos people can make pretty un-ImGUI looking things with ImGUI. But it's pretty early on in the process as of now. But alas, I think I'm gonna end the stream for now, and then I think I'm going to really try to start streaming every Tuesday, probably around the same time, 8:15 Central. If I don't stream next Tuesday, it was because I'm not yet pulled together enough as an individual to be streaming on a regular schedule. But thanks for joining, everybody. Probably check back next Tuesday. I'm going to try to at least start creating a live, creating like a future broadcast on YouTube so that you can know when I'm going to be streaming next. But yeah, thanks for joining, and come back probably next Tuesday or sometime next week.